Hi, this is Fake Zappa, also known as Jason T. Ingram. I'm coming to you from Florida. And I'm talking about invisibility, and I'm just so cranky about this whole issue. And I've been putting off doing this little series for so long that I'm like, I don't even want to spend the time to get out my lighting and my backdrops and all this kind of stuff. I did get this little microphone on, even though my cat ate the extension cord, which is why I'm so close. I do have an extension cord, but it's buried somewhere in this equipment thing. And this whole trailer is still quite a mess. My drum set got all messed up. I just drove almost 800 miles last weekend. And it was funny because I'm like, I'm going to keep driving until it stops freezing, for one thing, so my trailer will thaw out. It literally was thawing out as I was leaving Texas last week. And I'm going to keep driving until it stops freezing, and I'm going to keep driving until I get so tired I can't drive anymore. And luckily I found a place, and if it was daytime you would see there's a lake right there. It's really fucking pretty considering it's not super expensive. And I went to the beach today. Not too far to drive to the beach from where I'm at, which is cool because I'm saving like $1,000 a week instead of staying at one of those fancy pants places there. So here is what I wanted to talk about, is something I'm calling the view from below. The view from below. And it's kind of cool being up on this hill, and I can overlook another row of RVs down below, and then down below that is a lake. And I love seeing things from above. You could see more. But there's certain things that you could see from below that you can't see from above. And I will give this example that when you see pictures drawn by little kids, I mean really, really little kids, like 4, 5, 6 years old, even when they're sitting down, they're looking up and they can see in your nostrils. So if you notice, though, when you see pictures of grown-ups from older children, they don't have the big nostrils, if you've noticed that. And you get, pictures of, this is my little brother, my little sister, and you got this kind of stick figure, and they got eyes, and then they don't have nostrils. And then here's mommy and daddy, and they got big nostrils because all those kids are always just looking up. All I could see is your nose. I could see if you've trimmed inside of your nose. I could see if you've cleaned out the inside of your nose, and nobody sees this unless they're below you on a regular basis. And I'm looking up all the time. The thing is that these little kids can see things that other people can't see. And it's not just a literal perspective I'm talking about. When you're living in a caste system, in a social pecking order that doesn't acknowledge that we're in this, unless you're invisible, you're at the bottom of it, unless you're not getting seen, heard, considered, acknowledged, understood, if you're not getting your needs met. Here's the weird thing about me, is that I am buku privileged. When it comes to being an old white man, just that makes me privileged. The fact that I'm not like, I'm not even balding a lot. I mean, there's probably a little bit of balding going on, but I'm turning 48 this year, and I've only got this much gray. And I look on these dating sites, and whether these guys are honest about being in their late 40s or not, I'm like, holy shit, that guy looks old, that poor guy. And now, for men, though, looking young is really not as much as a big deal, really. Being powerful is huge. And every time guys come up to me, right away, I mean, it's like, can you be that fucking pathetic? Can you even hear yourself? They're just listing off like, oh, I'm working with people, and they know I'm working, and they acknowledge that I'm working, and I'm doing this and that, or I have done this. I worked. I did all this and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, holy shit. Is it my job to acknowledge the fact that you're already acknowledged and you refuse to acknowledge what I'm doing? And these conversations, I probably had these conversations before, I just didn't notice them, but now every time I have it, they make me so much more angry. Because it's kind of like, okay, I'm listening to somebody talk about themselves, and then I acknowledge and I ask them, and then I say, well, I have something similar. And instead it's like, oh, tell me about it. And they go, oh, okay, well, and then they talk about themselves. And then I acknowledge that. And I do something kind of like that. So I'm talking about me. They talk about them. I talk about them. They talk about them. I talk about me. They talk about them. I talk about them. Those are my conversations with men, especially white men, especially older men, and sometimes women. And then if there is any acknowledgement, I'm still kept a big secret. And there's always something that gets in the way of that. Boom, it's like, oh, I was going to do this, but something happened. Well, there is a curse going on. And I'm realizing, with abuse victims and people, that it's like, holy shit, I'm abusing this kid. I got to make sure he doesn't talk. I'm going to totally just make sure everybody around him doesn't see or hear this kid. And unfortunately, a lot of abuse victims carry that for the rest of our lives. Here's the weird thing. Powerful people can recognize who's invisible. And they don't even realize it. It's like a victimizer can look at a bunch of women walking down the street and they'll ask this rapist who's in prison, and they'll be like, okay, which one of these women would you think you could get away with raping? Not her. No. Oh, her, just because of the way she's walking. Well, nobody could tell how she was walking except this guy, because he was a predator. And that principle applies in folks that are predatory when it comes to things that might not even be considered unethical. When it comes to just treating somebody who is like, we got to keep that person a secret. And I'm going to be really nice, but I can't make sure that person gets all their needs met. So here's the thing. Is yes, I'm privileged. I've got stuff. I've got money. I've got a relative amount of health. I've got 2 legs that I can walk on. I've got a vehicle that works okay most of the time. And that's more than a lot of people have. The weird thing about it, and I had to really get clear with myself about this, is that I don't have enough privilege in order to do my work, to contribute in a way that's going to make my life worth living. So basically, I am privileged, but when it comes to my career, when it comes to my place in civilization and society and this whole system, especially as an entertainer and an activist and stuff like that, I don't have the privilege, I don't have the luck to be able to do my work in a way that's significant, that's really going to make my life worth living. And I have to deal with this on a regular basis. And that's why I literally hit the walls. That's why I scream and yell. And I hope nobody sees me when I lose my mind, because they will lock me up. And it's bad enough being invisible. But I tell you, though, once people get really scared of you, holy shit, it gets even worse. And so one of the things about right now in my life, now it very well could be that that the tiny little bit of recognition that I might get right now is taken from me. And it could get worse. It could get a little teeny bit better. It could get a lot better. I could end up on national daytime talk shows or something like that. And I could suddenly have this huge boost in my social media stuff or whatever. And, like Bernie's mittens, and this poor gal who became famous overnight because she knitted some mittens that Bernie Sanders ended up wearing in Washington, D.C. I think one of my favorite examples is Ken Bone. Boy, he went from hero to zero in 24 hours. And so I know what the public can do. And a lot of times when it comes to somebody who has something to contribute, they have to do something bad in order to be seen. And then they're branded as a bad person. But there's some people that are invisible, that the only way they'll see them is they hate them. I don't see this guy. I don't see him. We just don't see him. He's just crazy. He's just ignore him and he'll go away until, oh, that guy's bad. He's bad. Now we see him. Now we see him because we want to see him as bad. We want him to be bad. We want her to be bad. And I don't want to be a bad person. And I've noticed that, like, I did some things to, like I did this smear campaign project a couple of times. And it was all the things that people hate about me, whether they're true or not. And all of them were exaggerated. And it felt kind of good because it's like, holy shit, when people do see me, this is what they want to see. So if I do get a boost in recognition, whether it's a suddenly or whether it's gradually or whatever, there are some things right now as being an invisible person that when I talk to people and I get these interactions and I walk away thinking, that was really fucked up. I mean, really, really majorly fucked up. And they walk away thinking they were doing something nice and doing something good. And it made me want to kill myself. And it's no wonder why I'm alone, because I don't allow people to treat me like I'm a lesser value just because of my social status. And that has made life absolutely miserable everywhere I go, just because I've set some standards about my self-respect and about following my dream and being committed to it. Not because I necessarily want to do my dream or even really believe in it. It's just I don't have any other choice. It's the only thing that I can do in my life is to do this artsy-fartsy shit and to tell my story. And if I just did my art therapy and my self-care and just did that, I would rather die than keep living that life, especially working for other people's projects and not getting anything significant in return for investing in other people's creative shit. Even if it's halfway decent, it's still not worth it after all these years of doing that kind of stuff and being left with nothing. So here's the thing. The view from below is really surreal. And the only people that can see it are those who are in my same social status or below. If they are a little bit more privileged than I am, if they have friends and family, if they have anybody that acknowledges when they suffer, is there to meet their needs, they have no idea what a privilege that is just to have a community, even if it's just a parent or a sibling or somebody, that if they disappear, somebody will notice. And that's the big thing, is that when you're invisible, all you have to do is take a sort of inventory. My invisibility inventory is, if I disappeared, how long would it take for people to notice? What kind of an effect would it have on the world and other things and other people and stuff like that? It will have a big effect on my cat. My cat would probably starve to death and die. And as far as that is, it would take a long time for anybody to notice. It wouldn't have a huge impact because there's not employees under me that are going to wonder what their orders are and all this kind of stuff. And then I think about all the other people who think they're powerless, who think they can't help me, who think they don't have a voice. And all you got to do is ask these people, what would happen if they disappeared? Well, some of these people, within a matter of minutes, a lot of people would notice, what happened to so-and-so? Oh my God. Oh, they're okay. Well, that's good. And then there's some people that if they disappear for a matter of hours, I'm talking even seniors who have that kind of support, which is awesome. A lot of seniors don't. There's some senior citizens that could disappear and nobody will notice for weeks. And I know some of these people, and senior citizens are some of the most invisible people that there are. Disabled people, even some children, but children, they disappear. Yeah, that's a little different. That happens pretty quickly that they notice that, where's my kid? It's just the weird thing is that they still are pretty darn invisible when it comes to what they can contribute, what children suffer with, what their needs are. And not only that, we need to see from their perspective. And this is something that is so surreal to me when I talk to homeless people, or I talk to somebody who is institutionalized in a mental institution or whatever, and they're just not seen no matter what. And those are the only people who empathize with me, sympathize with me about my life. And it's really weird to them that it's like, oh my God, how could a guy who's got what seems like all this freedom, I got an RV, I can go wherever I want, I've got the funds to do it, I've got the time and the resources, and I'm not very good at it, though I did get some help from my neighbor to back this thing up. I hate backing. It actually gets harder. When you're dyslexic and you got anxiety, it gets harder to back up a 33-foot, 4-ton trailer. And still, though, people think I have a lot of freedom. People think I have the ability and the resources to get what successful artists have coming to them. And the truth is, when you're invisible, your money isn't worth much. Your money isn't worth anything to some people because they won't accept it. Your money's no good here. Of course, they won't say that, but they treat me in ways like that. Come on, stop. So, anyways, the view from below is interesting, and I want to keep these things going about my observations about being on the bottom of a social pecking order while having a strange amount of privileges considering, but not enough in order to make my life worth living, which sounds like a threat, but it's not. That's a reality for mentally ill people who are living in a situation where they don't know how long they're going to be able to handle it. So I'm basically white knuckling it year after year after year, and I'm having to take bigger risks, I'm having to take bigger sacrifices, and I'm having to come up with newer ideas in order to be creative, to be able to get the exposure that I need without hurting people. Because if they want me to be bad, then I'm just doing what they want to do. If they want me to be conventional, if they want me to serve under other people in order for them to lift me up, which sometimes that happens. But yeah, when you're almost 50, basically it's like, if you're not powerful by this age, you will never be. And what's the point of associating with somebody who's invisible unless I can own you? So when you're an artist, here's what I've noticed, is if you can give somebody power and influence that you might have, you're considered valuable. If you have a gift that you can be owned, I'm talking about if you can be a sex slave to somebody, they will give you an art exhibit. I've had that happen. I had a couple opportunities to get fucked by a couple of professional, recognized artists. And I decided, I mean, they weren't even my type. But still, though, that's how sad the reality is of arts and entertainment. It is more unethical than drug dealers. It is unregulated. It takes advantage of disadvantaged people, giving them false hopes, taking their time and money, abusing them, exploiting them, taking their content, their ideas, and leaving them with horrible reputations behind them, while the people in power end up with good reputations. That's the reality of arts and entertainment. Not only that, when it comes to other things like the gay community, mental health, when it comes to a lot of this other stuff that I'm also got my fingers in, I see those same sad principles operating in a lot of different institutions that we wouldn't think would succumb to a lot of that kind of behavior because they have really good reputations. But when you see the view from the bottom and you're looking up and you challenge these people and you challenge their power in ways that are very professional, very polite, and very non-confrontive, but you just say, hey, this is what I've suffered, survived, this is what I'm suffering, this is what my needs are, and this is what you guys do. This is what you're paid to do, and very nicely, will you help me? Can you even be paid to do this? And see what they do and see how they treat you. And it is really weird. But here's the thing, is that if you ever get powerful, you won't be treated that way and you won't see it. And if somebody even says it, you probably will block it out. And hopefully, if I ever do get that powerful, I really hope that I will see the invisible people, because that's what power does to you. It gets you to not see and to not hear certain things and certain people. It's like they just didn't happen. And there's a lot of things that I tell people, and I tell them over and over again, and it's really weird. It's like talking to a cult member, trying to talk to powerful people who are in educational circles, educational culture, even people like that who identify with helping underprivileged people. And they're folks that block things out like you're talking to a brainwashed cult member from a commune. Those are the things that I see being an invisible person, being on the bottom of a social pecking order. And that's the view from the bottom.